I'm Joe, and I'm so glad you're joining us this morning. And this is a place where we share the truth of God with the love of God so that our lives can be changed to the glory of God. We only have a few more chapels left before the summer season starts, and I can't wait, okay? Things are getting geared up around here. Cabins are now clean. The campsite is looking beautiful and it's smelling beautiful, and we're ready for you guys to get here. So if you're coming to camp this summer, we can't wait to see you guys during this summer's camping season. So this summer, as we get into our weeks of camp, we start with a staff training week, and some of our last few chapels are going to overlap with that. And so you can just picture what's going on around here, and it's going to be a busy flurry of activity in just a few days. We're going to get into our lesson in just a little bit, and we're diving back into our series called Help, I'm Lonely. Again, this comes from the book, How Can We Deal with Loneliness? And it's written by Matt Collier. We have these at our general store. We have them on the online store. Make sure you pick these up, okay? There's about, 7 or 8 of these things that are out nowadays, and they're fantastic. I mean, they've been so helpful for me personally. Little journal questions at the end of each of them, and just helps you dive into a certain topic and deal with some of the hard-hitting issues. Well, today's lesson is all about finding belonging. Finding belonging. And where do we find this belonging except for in a relationship with Jesus? And we're going to discover how Jesus, he actually comes to seek and to save the lost, and he breaks into this loneliness. It's through his sacrifice where he pays our sin debt and he adopts us into God's family. So we're going to find some genuine belonging here during our lesson today, being guaranteed forever to be a part of his family. Well, we do have a few questions in the homework from last week, and so let's dive into just a few of these things and see what you guys said in response to last week. Remember, we had Joe Fant on and had a great time with him, just once again getting me excited about the summer. We got some great speakers on the schedule, and I know we have some room still in some of the earlier weeks of camp, so make sure you sign up so you can come to camp for this summer. Let's see. So we have a lot of you guys answered some of the questions last week, did a great job. And so it looks like we had someone, even in asking the question, do you relate to one of those teens? Some of you guys are like, no, I don't. Praise the Lord. And I'm thankful whenever you can say, no, you don't relate, because that means that God has given you a great family network, or maybe a church network, or friends are right around you, and that's good. Some of you answer the question, what a particular group with which you've sought to belong. And some of you have this group of friends that actually feel like actual friends, and that's really neat. It looks like Zach and Ty, you form your own group. And even missionary kids, there's this unique group, and you can kind of understand each other when you have your group that way. And then Elena, she wrote in, and she was just saying she doesn't really have a particular group. And I challenge you guys, man, just find connection with those that are around you, but listen today, because we're going to find that we can run to Christ as well. What response will you make to God's invitation to seek my face? This is the last question from last week, and some of you mentioned, I want to seek God's face and make him my best friend. That's a great way of putting that. Responding through, first of all, deeper reading of his word, depression, rejection, like as in not feeling depressed and not letting that rule your heart, and then doing right. Man, you guys even alliterated your answer. That was awesome, Zach and Ty. Good job. And you guys, you said, by the way, every one of those they started with a D and then an R, as in the DR, the Dominican Republic. So deeper reading, depression rejection, and doing right. I'm going to give you guys a round of applause. That was pretty awesome. I got to give an actual round of applause to Zach and Ty. That was awesome. And then Elena, she wrote in, at church, you can seek God's face. The kids whose dads are deacons or elders or pastors have sort of a friend group that you can belong to. That's awesome. And then a few other questions, a few other random things from last week. I got the question, do I like running or do I hate it? That's a great question because I don't run very often. And I used to run a lot. I trained and ran a half marathon. I've never run a full marathon. I'd like to someday because there is something really fun about running and just being, like here we are talking about being alone and loneliness. And that's one of those ways that I actually really enjoy, getting out into nature and being alone. And so, strangely enough, I do enjoy running on occasion. It takes a lot of time, though. For me to actually get a good run in, I feel like I got to go really far. The loop that's, around camp and things like that, it's really hilly. And so it's steep hills running up and down, and it's not very fun. And sometimes I'm swatting bugs. That part I'm not crazy about. But when it's a flat, straight run, I love running on flat ground. Other people are different. I met our neighbor the other day. He says he runs up and down our hill, and he loves running on the steep hills. So more power to him. It's not me. Another question. Mercy asks, what's my favorite card game? I don't know if I have a favorite card game other than like some of the classics. I love Uno. Okay, just a basic game of Uno. Not all the Uno flip, Stacko and whatever. I just like normal Uno. Or if you're going to switch it up, I like giant Uno. We have these Uno cards that are literal 8.5 by 11 cards. They're huge. That's a lot of fun to play with. So that one, or Skip-Bo. Skip-Bo is another one we like in our family. So there you go. Lydia also asked, what's your favorite book? The Bible. Amen? Other than the Bible. I know you probably were thinking a different book other than the Bible. I read a bunch of biographies when I was younger. One of my favorite biographies was the biography of John Newton. The story, he was on a slave trading ship, and just a powerful story. John Newton, I love that story. I also loved a fictional story, so fiction side of things, The Count of Monte Cristo. Oh, story of revenge, and it's great. Very exciting story there. But also Treasure Island, that was a classic, one of the first books I read, I think in grade school, I can't remember, but one of my favorites there as well. So, and okay, since I'm naming all these, there was another one, and it's really faint in my memory, but it was called Work and Win. Work and Win. I don't remember who wrote it, but it was just, I think Oliver Optic or something like that. That was one of those names. So it was a fantastic book. Great lessons in it. Good book there. All right, that's enough books for you. You only asked for one. I gave you a few. Here's some other questions. Elena was asking, there's this teen, a student teacher that she knows, and she wants to tell her about God. Can you give some good advice? Without knowing the whole situation, or even how much time you get to spend with this person on a weekly basis, a daily basis, a lot of this is relationships. It's just building a relationship with a person, and sometimes that relationship takes a long time. Sometimes with my family, the way we've shared the gospel with people and told people about God is by inviting them over to our house, and we have them for dinner. That's what my wife likes to do. We would invite our neighbors over, and other friends on the sports team, we invite them over. Here where I am at camp, I invite them to come to camp. And we have scholarships for them. We say, hey, we just want you to come. Well, you can come for free. Just come to camp. And they get to hear about God here. But whatever your situation is, I'd encourage you, just tell your story. At some point, maybe you have a chance to say, hey, I'd love to tell you my story. Or you ask them their story, like, hey, what's your life story? Tell me about yourself. And then you could turn around and tell your life story as well. But you get to tell your eternal life story in the midst of that. So just talk. And sometimes it's not necessarily taking like a gospel tract, which you can totally do, and you can walk through a gospel tract. Sometimes it's more about, hey, let me tell you my story and love to hear about you, and this is what's changed my life. All kinds of different ways. Countless ways to start conversations, to walk through the gospel, whether you use a Romans Road or a What is the Gospel tract. We have some of those around here. There's tons of different ways that you can share the gospel with people. And then there's a prayer request on here, and I'm going to pray for you. It's an anonymous prayer request, but thank you so much for writing in all those questions, and we appreciate you guys tuning in to these chapels each week, and it's a joy to stay connected with you, and I hope it's been fun for you guys as well to join in Homeschool Chapels. We got a few left, so without further ado, let's get into our lesson for today. So how can I find genuine belonging? Today, as we dive back in, I'll admit, this is a tough and a heavy topic of loneliness. This is a very difficult side to even think about. The effects, the pain, and even the reason for why we feel loneliness. Back in the 1950s, there was a songwriter named Elvis Presley, very popular. But before he became popular, he wrote a lot of songs, and nothing was really hitting the charts, and until he wrote one song called Heartbreak Hotel. With it, there are these lyrics in the song that says, "You make me so lonely, baby. Well, I'm so lonely. I get so lonely I could die." I guess you could say that theme of loneliness, it struck a chord even way back in the ancient times of the 1950s. And that song connected with millions of people, made him popular. Because loneliness isn't new. It's a deep human struggle. And even for teens today, it's more than just a feeling. It's more than just something they kind of struggle with. It's a big deal. According to a recent study by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, it says that 42% of teens reported experiencing persistent feelings of hopelessness and sadness. 42% of teenagers. That's almost half of the teenagers that they interviewed had persistent feelings of hopelessness and sadness. And then they also asked, and 22% seriously considered even taking their own life. Another 18% of those went so far as to be serious enough to make a plan. That's heavy. So what's driving this? And loneliness is a big piece of it. In our last chapter, last week, we looked at how we all crave belonging, and only God can truly fill that void. But there's a problem, and it's a big one. You see, our sin keeps us far from Him. It was the same thing that even pushed Adam and Eve away from God, pushed them away from His presence. They wanted to hide after they ate the fruit because they felt guilty, and they wanted to be away and alone. That communion, that fellowship, that relationship was broken. So how do we find this real belonging with God? Let's unpack this together. And as we do, we're going to lean on Jesus and really run to Him in all these illustrations for the true answer. First point is that Jesus breaks into our loneliness And we can see that when we start to look at Jesus, we see the whole story of him being part of the Trinity, the Godhead. He existed eternally, but he decided to come into our lives. He came into the world to seek and to save the lost. In Luke 19, verse 10, it says, "For the Son of Man," that's Jesus, "he came to seek and to save that which was lost." That's us. We're the lost and the lonely, wandering sheep. That illustration of wandering like a sheep and being lost. I've lost animals over the years, and some of them, cats, have just wandered off from the house and they go and find a new home, or they just get lost out in the woods. Who knows? Some chickens we've lost. They wander off into the woods the same, and I have to go out there, and I have gone off into the woods to look for them. I've even had to chase them back home, go pick them up and carry them back. And I know that Jesus is using the illustration, and even in the Bible, it uses the 99 sheep that are lost, the 99 sheep and the one that was lost. And the shepherd goes and he leaves those 99 sheep to find the one that's lost. And he even throws a party when he finds it. And he says, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." That's how Jesus sees you and me. Worthy of searching for us when we're lost, and worthy of finding us. And he celebrates when he finds us. We're like those sheep that were lost in our own way. In Isaiah 53:6, it says, "All we are like sheep who've gone astray. We've turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." But Jesus comes after us to bring us home. But how? How does he do this? The Bible tells us that we're all like sheep who've wandered and gotten lost, and pursuing our own way, going after our own pleasures. And when he comes to seek us, he brings us home in Luke 15:7. Jesus provides a way of belonging to him. Jesus gets what it feels like to feel alone. You know what he did? He left heaven's perfect connection with God to become a human. That's what Philippians 2 is all about. He faced rejection and misunderstanding. Yet he always turned to his Father in prayer. He went and prayed multiple times. You see his prayers in the Bible. Until we get to the cross, when Jesus was crucified, the sky went dark for 3 hours. In Mark 15:33, it says that he cried out. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." My God, why have you forsaken me? He's talking to his Father. Because on that cross, Jesus was taking all of our sins on him. One author from a long time ago, he put it this way, that Jesus himself was deserted of God for a time, that people might not be deserted forever. Jesus went through the worst loneliness so that we could belong to God. His sacrifice on the cross and being rejected and lonely, his sacrifice bridges the gap that our sin created, and it makes a way for us to come home. Now, our desperate situation is pretty bad. In the book, Matt describes a shocking scene. You know, he travels a lot. He started Camps Abroad, this ministry that has camps all over the world. And one of the places that he visited, the Mathari Valley, he describes it as the smell of raw sewage was flowing beside the muddy streets, and it was overpowering. Haunted eyes peered at us from the doorways of shacks made out of discarded wood, cardboard, and tin cans pounded into sheets. I had seen pitiful conditions before, but nothing like this massive slum in Nairobi, Kenya. Hundreds of thousands of people live on top of a garbage dump with no access to clean water or medical treatment. Mind-numbing drugs and alcohol flow freely in the Mathare Valley, and the children suffer the most. Without adults to care for them, they fend for themselves. And bands of orphans roam the streets at all hours of the day and night, sneaking and stealing and dodging the law, doing whatever they can to survive. These are the outcasts of the Kenyan society. Children who don't belong. Now, that's describing a picture of orphans in a village. But I want you to think that that's also a picture of our spiritual state without Christ. We are hopeless, outcast, alone, helpless. Romans chapter 8. Romans 8, if you can flip over there, there's a massive help in this section. Romans 8 describes that state that we were in, hopeless and alone. And Paul describes this in verse 12. He says, "Therefore, brethren, we are debtors, not to the flesh, to live after the flesh." We are debtors to sin. And there's a great debt of sin that we owe. It's like owing a debt that you cannot pay. And you're stuck in a prison of guilt, still owing this debt, but you're stuck in a prison and you can't even pay it back. There's nothing you could do to make it right. And back then, even when Paul's writing this, the people who would have read this, they would have understood this through the lens of how debtors could end up even in jail or slavery, working endlessly to pay off the debt. In Romans 8:15, it kind of talks that way. Says, for ye have not received the spirit of bondage, that slavery, the spirit of bondage, again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption. Our sin debt is like that. No amount of good deeds can clear it, because sin taints everything that we do. It's a moral debt. And we're trapped, and it feels like there's no way out. But that's where God steps in. And you can talk about going from slavery to sonship. Here's the good news. Jesus doesn't just He doesn't just free us from that debt. He doesn't just clear it. He makes us family. And in Romans 8:14, it says, "For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God." That means that you're not just forgiven, you're adopted as God's own kid, His own child. I mean, think about what that changes. You can run to God as your Father now, knowing that He's got your back. He hears your prayers. He has a forever home for you. Everything that goes along with a family, you have it with God. In Romans 8:15, it explains for you that you didn't receive the spirit of adoption to fall back into fear, but you've received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, "Abba, Father." And in Paul's day, adoption wasn't just for kids. I mean, sometimes even slaves were adopted into families. They were adopted as heirs, and they would become full family members, and they were adults. That's why God does for us. When God adopts us, this is what He's doing. He's adopting us into His family. We have belonging in Him. So imagine those kids in the Mathare Valley. And they're too weak to move. They don't have a family to care for them. They don't have a home to sleep in. And they're on the streets and they're alone. And someone walks through this village, a couple that cares and they pick up this child. And if this was you would get adopted and brought into a new life, a new home. And that's the kind of rescue that Jesus offers to us. 100% belonging, and there's 100% guarantee. So what does this adoption have to do with loneliness? Essentially, it changes everything. It changes everything for you. You're not alone anymore. Even if you feel alone without people around you, you're not alone. You're part of God's family, and it's permanent. Romans 8:16 says that the Spirit Himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. God's Spirit in you confirms that you belong, and it gets better. Romans 8, verse 17, and if we're children, then we are heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we have suffered with Him, and that we may also be glorified together. We are heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. That means that we share in the same inheritance as Jesus Himself. Now, there's a story told in the book, and it's a shocking story. A college student in Moldova, he was interrupted in his studies by a knock on the door, and there was a lawyer there. And the lawyer came in and told him that he had recently inherited, now get this, $1.25 billion from some rich uncle that he had met maybe once 9 years ago. An heir is a person who inherits everything, or they inherit this portion of the estate. Now, most of us will never inherit some huge sum of money, some large sum of money, certainly never $1.25 billion. But here, what we're looking at is an inheritance that is even bigger. This one is not just limited to a certain amount of dollars. It's not limited to a certain amount of days or years that you can even use it. It is for eternity. It's a forever future with God, and we are now His heirs and heirs with Christ. That means that God has graciously chosen to give us the same privileges as His Son, Jesus. Forever, you have these privileges. And you don't have to feel like an outsider anymore. This is God's answer to loneliness, and it's ours if we accept it, and we can have it for forever. Well, take some time to meditate on these, and I'd encourage you even go back and read Romans 8 and read these passages that can help encourage you in the fact that you are adopted in the family of God if you have actually truly trusted in Him. Take some time to work through the homework questions, and these questions you can find there. When was the last time that you were overwhelmed by loneliness? Hopefully you haven't been. But when was the last time, and what did it feel like? Second question, are you confident that God has adopted you into His family? And what does that really mean for you? And then what does adoption into the family of God have to do with your feelings of loneliness? Well, that is all the time we have for today, and we look forward to next week. So don't miss next week. We'll see you then.